So just first off, how are you feeling ahead of Hibs at the weekend?
So it's an important game, like they all are now at this stage. A team that are in really good form. So I'm sure they'll travel with a big away support. When big teams like Hibs are in good form, the fans embrace that, and they'll be looking forward to it. But I think everyone can see how competitive and how tight the league is. So we definitely won't underestimate the importance of the game, and one that we need to be ready for.
Obviously, last time out, first half obviously went very well, and the second half maybe obviously a different story. Is there much you can look back on that for here on Saturday?
Yeah, there's aspects of it, because I think since then Hibs have been very consistent with their shape since then. I thought we played really well first half, but you get nothing for just doing it for 45 minutes, and that proved in that day. So they've since beating us that day, they've really kicked on. I think they've lost 1 in 11 around about that, so it shows how well they've progressed in that time. But despite the frustration and the disappointment from Saturday against Livingston in the Cup, we were in really good form in the league, and it's one that we must be ready for and try and maintain that form.
You spoke about disappointment then, and obviously you would have liked a cup run, but does it help kind of focus on the league now until the end of the season?
No, I don't think there's any help. I would wanted to be in the next round of the cup, because it now means that we're idle for a couple of fixtures in February and March when you're not out of the cup, and to keep that continuity, to keep the rhythm, we no longer have that. We have to accept that, and that's one of the main sort of disappointments.
And just in terms of Hibs specifically, what kind of threats do you think they could pose on Saturday?
I think many, because I think, like I say, when the team's in form and their confidence is high, they've got a lot of threats. I think Martin Boyle has really ignited his season in the last 6 to 8 weeks, scoring goals and performing like we all know he's capable of doing. I think they've found a system that they're very comfortable in. They've got really good attacking wing backs, which allows them to play on the front foot. And not only that, they've got a really strong squad. Looking at their team sheet from Saturday in the Cup, they've got a few players coming back from injury as well. So it's going to be a really tough game, and we're, like I said, definitely not going to underestimate the importance of it.
I just want to ask before I forget, can no one play on the weekend?
No, he can't play. So that's an agreement that you have when you take a player in the same league on loan, that naturally he's not going to be available. So no hand this week.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, just speaking to Zach there, and obviously getting used to things here, are there any kind of other players or any kind of areas you'd like to strengthen in January before the window's up?
Well, we'll see. We've got a big positive, I believe, is we've got the 3 lone boys that come back into the squad, in Dylan Smith, George Robinson and Andrew McLeod. They come back from their loans, so I believe they're the future of this club. They train with us every day. I see how well they're progressing, so there'll be like 3 new signings. Slightly frustrated that we couldn't use them on Saturday in the Cup, but that was a decision we made previously in terms of letting them play for the team that they were on loan at, but now they come into the reckoning this week.
How much do you think their loans and their experience away from county could help coming back?
Well, it's always part of the process. We felt in the summer that if they weren't going to get the game time regularly with us, then it was important to get that elsewhere. We were patient, different, varying levels in terms of their loans, with Dylan being in the Football League and Andrew and George being in the Highland League, but it's still competitive football, and that's what was important. But as I've said previously, even though they're doing that, they're training with us every day. That's part of the sort of loan agreement that we have. So we're still seeing them, we're still seeing the improvements. They're seeing the way we want to play and the style that we have. So you're always evaluating them and seeing the progression that they're making.
And obviously with Dylan being involved with the international setup as well, how much boost is that as well in terms of getting ready for that first team experience?
Well, it's a great individual accolade. We're really proud of him in terms of captaining Scotland at youth level and the progression that he's making. He's had I've spoke about many times he had a tough period after breaking into the team as a 16-year-old and doing exceptionally well. Then picked up a couple of injuries while his body was growing and he was becoming that physical specimen that he is now. So you've just got to be patient at times. But all that between a loan and being with Scotland can only make him better.
Just any team news?
Like I said, no Han Kenny. Jack Greaves is not available because he went off on Saturday with a head knock. So the protocol is that he's not available, and we'll have to gauge that in terms of how he recovers from it. But in terms of everyone else that played in the game, they've come out of it fine, and as I say, we've got the 3 loans coming back to add to it.
Perfect, thanks for that.
In terms of Dylan, I think when we spoke last week, you'd still to kind of confirm whether he was going to stay or return or stay where he was. But the fact that obviously the Arbroath spell had been going so well for him, and he had that really good spell of first team football that he was looking to towards the end of the season. That must have been one that you really made with an intention to sort of get him involved in the first team towards the end of the season.
Yeah, look, it's an important decision, not just for Dylan but for us as a club in terms of going into the second half of the season. We've not had Ricky Lamy and we've not had Will Nightingale, so we have to make sure that we're best prepared for that moving into the second part of the season. We've tried to leave it as late as possible in terms of giving Arbroath the respect that they deserve, and the communication's been very consistent and clear in terms of that. But right now we feel it's important that he's here with us.
What was kind of the final factor, this decisive bit that made you think, yeah, he needs to come back?
Well, several factors. Like I say, we've got to take into consideration the existing players we've got. Casper went off injured last week, so you're always aware of that in terms of could that be anything more than what it is. Will obviously is not close to being a part of the group, so there's another player, and we've just not had Ricky Lamy available enough for the first 6 months of the season. So when you take that all into account, and the fact that Dylan's been playing regular football, you could go and try and get somebody else and leave him where he is, but the decision right now I believe is the right one in terms of him coming to be involved this week with us.
And with the 2 young lads coming in last week as well, are you just overall more content than you were at the start of the window with the defensive strength and depth that you've got? Yeah,
and I think we need that, because once this window closes, that's that's your squad. So the demands of playing and the physicality of it, and the way it is in the winter with the pitches and stuff, you're always susceptible to an injury at any time. So we're in a really good place in terms of the numbers we've got in that area, and we've got real competition is what we want, because we've not had enough of it, because like I say, there's been a couple that have not been available, challenging the others for their positions, and you want healthy competition.
It means you can basically play a whole new defence if you wanted to this weekend. Does that bring its own set of challenges, even though it's obviously an exciting thing to have these guys back involved?
No, because despite the frustration of Saturday's game and the result, it's about being calm. There's no knee-jerk reaction. We've got players that have been very consistent for us, and Akil Wright and Casper Lapata and Eli Campbell. But what we need is strength and depth as well, and we need competition for that. Like I say, we're in a really good position now, the way things look.
You mentioned Ricky and Will. Is there any closer to be a decision made on Will's future? Because I think you said there may be some talks with Wimbledon there as well.
Yeah, so like I say, it's ongoing. We're seeing how Will gets on. He's getting a scan tomorrow. Because like I said, he had a setback a couple of weeks ago. We've tried to let it settle. So now that he's at the stage to get a scan, we'll see. We'll have more clarity in terms of where he's at. Also, we've got to take into consideration he's been out for the best part of 5 months now. So it's going to be tough to then get up to speed. We don't have many games left. I think it's 15 games, so there's not many games. for us to play. So once we get that result of his scan, again, it gives us more clarity in exactly where he is, and then we can make decisions from there.
Yeah, Mitchie going for a scan, a second opinion last week. Have you had any result from that?
Yeah, it's all good in terms of that. There's no drastic procedure that needs done. It's more a conservative approach. He's got discomfort there, hence why he's not been available. So that is one that just managing it day by day, seeing how he progresses, and hopefully he'll be back in the next couple of weeks.
You talked about Hibs before as well, and the last time that you faced them, could you see signs in that game that they could go on the run that they have since you last played them?
I think everyone had, not just me. You could see from afar the quality they've got individually, collectively. Confidence is a big thing in sport and football. There's a lot of games where they were, probably having the upper hand in the match and falling the wrong end of a result, whether it was conceding a late goal. And it's not dissimilar to us in terms of not being able to win away from home. You get that one victory and it can change the mindset, the belief, and that's what they've done since then. So they're in really good form, and for me it's a reflection of how strong their squad is. I seen their squad at the weekend, and you see everyone that's now coming back from injury, and it looks very healthy.
A couple of guys that missed out in the squad on Saturday, Dawn, like Victor and Josh Reed. Is there any updates on them? Because obviously the full quarter wasn't named on the bench, and you've spoken about some of the younger guys coming back to impact, and you would like them available at the weekend. So is there any updates on those two?
So Josh wasn't involved, or Vic. Like I've said, there's a knock-on effect in terms of people coming in the club. There is potentially 2 players that will leave the club this week. It's still very early, but we've given them permission to speak to clubs in terms of them looking to put themselves in a better position to play regular football. So we'll see how that goes. I'll not say who it is individually, but there is a couple of players that potentially won't be with us come this weekend.
Would those be permanent or loan exits?
It could be either or. There could be a loan and there could be a permanent. So like I say, it's very early, so don't want to go into too much detail, because if it doesn't materialise, then they're still very much part of our football club. Everyone's here for a reason, because I believe in them, but at the same time, if I believe I can help them go and play football, then I'll do that. But if not, they come back and they're fighting to play for this club.
How have you found that side of management? Because you've spoken quite a few times about guys maybe coming, you're not going to stand in their way if they want to go and play more regular football. Now you're finding maybe in talks with other clubs, but you don't want to shut the door on them. It's all this is a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, and it comes down to being open, being honest, having clarity. When you speak with the players, don't try and fool them or kid them on, in terms of just having a good, honest conversation and letting them know where I feel they stand, because what they think might be different. Everyone's got their own opinion in football. That's why we love it, because we all see things slightly different. But I always try and be honest and tell them what I think from my perspective. And if I don't see that regular game time coming, then it's only natural that I want to help them find it somewhere else, because like I say, I believe everyone is very good footballers, but you can only pick 20 players on a Saturday. So I don't feel it's not one that I shirk away from in terms of having the conversation, because I think it has to be done, and I think players they respect honesty, and I think that helps when you're having those conversations.
It's obviously not that long since you were a player yourself. How much does your own experience inform that sort of approach, knowing what the player would want and would respect in that situation?
Massively, and that's why you're always learning. You always think back to when you were a player, the experiences you had, and if I'm being honest, it's probably the thing that I disliked the most. If you were looking for answers and you weren't getting them, if you go in to speak to a manager and you come out with more questions than what you went in with. I don't think it benefits anyone, because ultimately an individual just wants to play football, and if you're giving them misguided information, it just means that they're even more clouded in terms of what they're thinking. So that's why I think it's really important, and that's what I try to be. And I say that from day one when I became manager. My door's open anytime, any day, but if you're coming in, we're going to have an honest conversation, and I think, like I say, I think players like that.
I guess this window as well is kind of the domino effect in terms of some players coming into the squad, like so the younger guys coming back in from their loan spells, and obviously can have the knock-on effect for moving players out, and also even the effect for yourself trying to bring players in. You might be waiting on other clubs to just do the same thing.
Yeah, it's always like you say, domino effect. Ultimately, you're never going to leave yourself short, and I think that's important. So that's why the three younger lads coming back really, adds to the squad, not just for a number reason, because again, if I didn't think that they were ready to be part of the group, then I would send them back on loan to get that experience. But I think they're now at that stage where they're ready to compete and fight for the jersey. So it's exciting for me, in terms of the progression they're making.
Yeah, and it's a sign obviously as well that you've walked in their steps before as well by breaking into this first team after earning it as well. So the message will be the same thing to them, is to go and earn their place in the squad and stamp their authority on it.
Yeah, you have to earn it. The hard bit's still to come. The hard bit is, you've got to that stage. Now it's about making that next step, and that's just about being as consistent as you can every single day, just like they're doing right now. And then when the opportunity comes on a match day, grasping that. But at the same time, the first opportunity you get is not going to make or break you. And again, from my point of view, I think that's important, because it's new. It's a new environment, playing in front of X amount of fans, and this spotlight that's on it, the scrutiny, and dealing with that sometimes take time. I was someone who made my debut at 18, but I probably didn't become a regular till I was 21, 22. So there, everyone goes through that process at a different, speed, and I'm very comfortable with that in terms of, being patient with them. But what I would say is they're, right now in a really good spot in terms of the way that they've progressed physically, technically, and tactically.
Yeah, I guess it's a sign as well of how different younger players develop at different times. I mean, you've got like James Wilson at Hearts and Lennon Miller, who have obviously taken a lot of headlines, but like you and Wilson at Motherwell as well, obviously having a couple of loan spells elsewhere, but breaking into the first team this year, kind of establishing himself there. It shows that there are different pathways for these younger players to come in and make an impact.
And there always will be, because again, it comes back to what I said. It's why we love football, because all it takes is someone else's different perspective on an individual to give them that opportunity. Because if we all liked the same players, or we all wanted to play the same way, then it'd be really boring. Whereas the fact that we all have different feelings on football and the way we see it, it means that a different set of eyes can give you that opportunity. And that's why you've got to just be consistent and relentless, the way that you train, the way that you make sacrifices to make sure you're in the best possible shape for when those chances come.
You talked about your own breakthrough and how it maybe took a couple of years between debuting and establishing yourself. Is that different now for younger players, with like the attention they'll get, social media, all the eyes that are on them? Do players still get that sort of time, do you think?
Well, again, I always say I believe I was fortunate because people at this football club were really patient with me. I wasn't ready physically. I maybe was at a stage technically to play, hence why I played at 18, but I was nowhere near ready physically. So luckily for me, at this club, they stayed patient and waited till that time came. Not that I became this big, strong person or anything, but I improved it and got better. But now, yeah, maybe they don't get that time, because I think people then start to think when you're 20, 21, you should be a regular, whereas that stage didn't come to me until I was 21, 22. So I think, but then that also maybe comes down to the fact of the how volatile football is, how quickly managers change. So there's always that different cycle coming, whereas I had a good consistent, people around me. So again, it's things that I learned from when I was younger to try and to help the individuals here to get to that point.
I suppose the group of players around, a young player in that situation is really important as well, which, I'm sure you'll have a lot of, belief in, what you've created here as being a nice sort of breeding ground for, young players coming back into the setup.
It is, and I think, again, that it just goes back to how important it is that they're with the senior players every day. They do everything that the senior players do, so it's not like, you have that maybe a reserve team where there's the transition and then you've got to then get to the first team. Here at our club, the way we work, the young players are with the senior players every day, so they become familiar with it, the habits, the culture that we've got, they're used to it, so they're not spooked when it then ultimately, hopefully, when it comes to the point where they're playing for the first team regularly. They've been doing it for a couple of years anyway. I think when COVID came, our process at this club changed, and for me, the benefits of it is that the young players, you could say, are thrown into the deep end, very early, but I think it'll help them in the long run in terms of making that progression.